Hello, everyone. So excited to see everyone joining us for this Stardog webinar. Today is demo day. Our demo days are committed to showing product as well as discussing the power of knowledge graph and educating folks on various aspects of it. So thank you for joining us. My name is Ingrid Ramos, and I'm a director of marketing here at Stardog. Today, we have on deck Enterprise Knowledge Graph end-to-end as our topic. And what that means is we're going to go through the entire platform and highlight a couple of areas that are of interest and key differentiators. We have Laura today, Laura Fiery, our senior product manager, who's going to be sharing some slides as well as jumping into the product with us. And she's going to look at knowledge graph through the lens of Customer 360, which is a use case that we felt various people could connect with. But knowledge graph being used throughout various use cases, across personas, and then of course in quite a few industries, including finance, pharma, manufacturing, and consulting firms, etc. So hopefully you'll be able to see this through the lens of your own data. And if you have any questions, please feel free to go ahead and use the chat or the Q&A tools. I monitor the Q&A tools. And then of course, the chat tool, typically everyone can see that. So you can post questions there as well. Wonderful, we are recording this and a copy of it will be sent after the webinar. So don't worry about that. And I think that's it. Oh, Q&A, we'll get to it at the end, but if you have a question throughout or you can't see something or there's a technical issue, feel free to post that as well. With that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Laura to get started.
Thanks, Ingrid. Like Ingrid said, we'll be covering kind of an end-to-end view of the Stardog Enterprise Knowledge Graph today. And so just a little bit of an agenda. We will start with a quick overview of what an Enterprise Knowledge Graph is. Then we'll jump into a demo of our platform, and we'll take a little bit of a different take than we've used in the past for some demo days. So of course, if you have feedback on that, please let us know. And then as Ingrid was saying, we'll end with open Q&A for any questions that you have. So starting with that overview of what is an enterprise knowledge graph. As a simple definition, knowledge graphs are a flexible semantic data layer for answering complex queries across data silos. Knowledge graphs serve as data platform and a methodology. So knowledge graph as a platform is a kind of data fabric, mesh, architecture, whatever language you and your organization wants to use, that provides linked data across the enterprise. And then as a methodology, it provides a layer of abstraction that separates the physical details of the data from the logical representation of the business concepts and knowledge that the data actually contains. Knowledge graphs are flexible and can evolve with minimal effort. They're not static or rigid. And so let's say you wanted to capture shipment data. From a customer's perspective, that's simply when is the product going to arrive to them? But from the business perspective, that might be where is the product located now? And by what method is it going to be shipped with? Where are the closest and the cheapest drop-off locations, etc. And you want to represent both of these points of view within your data set without reloading your data into different systems. And so all of this is possible. And the graph lets you evolve these points of view as your organization continues to evolve. And so knowledge graphs can query data where that data lives as well. And so this is key because otherwise every project that you would start using your data, you'd have to be moving data into new systems or exporting that into flat files and then munging it. And so as data volumes keep growing, it gets more and more difficult to move everything with every new project that your teams are starting. And when you bring in the cloud and having data located there, it just becomes really impossible due to whether that's timing or cost constraints of bringing that data into other systems. And so all of these combine into a foundation for an enterprise knowledge graph, which provides an enriched contextual layer that is well suited for taming many of the challenges that can exist within existing enterprise data management approaches. And so looking at what we'll cover today, many individuals and teams are tasked with solving for challenges such as innovation or revenue generation, or simply staying ahead of their competition. In today's demo, we will highlight a use case around Customers 360, as Ingrid was mentioning, and we'll take the perspective from Acme Company, who already has plenty of customer data that sits across various business entities, and each of those business entities manage their own operations and have slightly different takes on how they collect their data. And so in short, how will those systems know which data across those business entities can be combined and how it can be compared? And so that's kind of the starting place of Acme, our fictional company. And so just highlighting a little bit of what the company has. So again, they have customer data such as demographics, purchases, web visits, product reviews, social media, kind of the typical customer 360 data you would expect. They also have records of online and in-store purchases, product information, store locations, also implied within that. You can see that Acme is both an online and a brick and mortar company. They have their own data warehouse and a business intelligence tool, and they've begun their journey with a knowledge graph. And so at a broad level, the teams are tasked to solve the following business challenge proposed by leadership. Find innovative revenue generation and novel approaches to Acme's business strategy development. Leverage existing data, and that all proposals must be data-driven. And just noting that this was a proposal sent out to all teams within Acme, not just to say like their data and analytics team. And so walk through some of the analysis different Acme departments completed for their proposals. Before we jump into the actual demo, we just wanted to take a quick look at the ontology and the model that Acme uses. So in order to answer complex queries, Acme uses a knowledge graph in their data stack. And this knowledge graph creates a semantic data layer, as we've described, that connects disparate data and tags it with the same business meaning. So Acme can gain insights from their full enterprise data versus comparing or ranging data across different areas of their organization for each analysis project. And this is just a simplified data model of Acme's knowledge graph, focusing on their customer profiles visualized at the center of the graph. And data from across their organization, as well as third-party sources, is mapped into this data model, creating a cohesive, complete view of each Acme customer. Acme can answer kind of common customer-based queries, such as how many customers have purchased and from which locations. But as those data layers become more complex, meaning they're adding in both their online and in-person purchases, or they're tracking this across business units for, say, the production of those products, it gets to be a more complex query. And so with their knowledge graph, Acme business analysts are able to still use a single endpoint, and so ask this question in a simple format without worrying about the different purchase points or the different data stores that might capture that underlying information. And so more and more, Acme's planning has focused on finding revenue generators, mining innovation, and designing every project to have tangible business outcomes. It's part of what prompted leadership's call to their different departments. And so this evolution within Acme is happening both inside and outside of IT. And so while data and analytics can be a bit of trial and error, and you begin to ask questions that you might not know that there's an answer for yet, how can you do this in an exploratory, data-driven way? And so let's jump into the demo, see how different personas within Acme might address this business challenge being asked from them. And so we're going to start out and we'll put on our marketing analyst hat. And we'll start out by going to Stardog Cloud, where we know we can access our different Stardog connections, and particularly that knowledge graph that our team has put together capturing our customer data. We'll see here that if we did want to do any learning or find out documentations, it's linked throughout this portal home screen. So we'll go into our connection that captures our Customer 360 data, and we'll open Stardog Explorer, which is an exploration and search tool for Stardog knowledge graphs. And as an analyst, we're just going to bring up our database, and we'll just make sure to set our graph and model to the right data set. And so within here, as a marketing analyst, I've been following a few of our customers, and I'm just remembering that a customer that stood out to me in the past that just looked like they had a really good journey was something with Escobar. Can't really remember, so I go ahead and do a search, and looking at these different profiles. Oh, I see Kathy. This was the user that I was interested in. So I'm going to go ahead and send Kathy to the graph and just kind of see what are some of the data connections that exist for Kathy. And so as a marketing analyst, I'm going to be looking for different patterns that seem interesting here. And so as I look at different options for data that we could use to increase our revenue, I see that we're capturing neighbor data. So that's something that I hadn't really thought of. And I see here that, we almost like jump between different neighbors that Kathy has, which seems kind of interesting to me. So we can go ahead and look at a more advanced query. And let's say we wanted to find profiles that have neighbors to other profiles, and we just wanted to see some of those responses. And we'll actually just jump back to the list view for the responses. And so we see some examples of profiles that we know have customers. This is in our example, let's say even just knowing that 100 results was a lot of customers for us to be targeting. And so if we start to dig into each of these groups, we see that we can follow different paths of existing customers or customers that have interacted with our tools and find their neighbors. And so this gives us an idea that for our leadership proposal, we would want to target neighbors of our existing customers, both through physical mailing, targeting, as well as targeting towards digital devices. So that's kind of like one example of a marketing analyst using Stardog Explorer to see what connections exist in their data set and using that to drive innovation in their targeting practices. And so now we're gonna, switch gears, right? Change hats that we're wearing, and we're going to now pretend that we're part of the revenue operations team. And so part of revenue operations is that we know we have data that captures the specific credit cards that our customers are using. And we've had a few credit card companies reach out to us for partnerships on cashback bonuses, but we're not sure which ones we should respond to and spend the time and effort to build relationships with. And so we don't have that data yet in our knowledge graph. We put in a request with IT, but they're working on a few other projects, so they haven't gotten into our request. But with Stardog Designer, I can go ahead and add that information myself. And so I'll open Stardog Designer, which is a low code, no code visual mapping and modeling tool for within Stardog, and we'll go ahead and start a new project for customer 360 demo, and we'll import the existing model within that database, and then we'll start adding the credit card data that we were interested in. So customer 360, select our model, go ahead and import that. And we see that same model that we were seeing before in the slide. We specifically want to be adding credit card data to our orders. And we'll just do something just for a little bit of cleanup here. We know that we need to change one of our settings just to a specific project namespace. So we'll go ahead and save that. And then we'll start adding the new class for credit card information that we want to add. So we can add credit card here, and we're going to add a few relationships. So we know that we're adding credit card information tied to orders, so that's used in. And then we're also going to be adding a relationship for associated with. And so we want profiles to be, associated with. We want profiles to be associated with credit cards as well. So we'll add both of those relationships, and then we'll add a few attributes with data type. So card name, we'll add the company that produces the credit card. We'll add the type, so what network the card is run on, and then we'll also add the annual fee. Decimal, just so that we can take that into consideration. We'll go ahead and create credit card. We'll see those two relationships were added as well, and so associated with, we said we wanted to add to profile, and then the used in relationship we wanted to add to order number. And so now we're going to add a project resource to actually complete our mapping. And we see that we have the option to do virtual graphs. And so if we proceeded, we would see, we know we have a data warehouse that we keep in Databricks. So we see options here, but we don't see the specific data set. So IT hasn't gotten into even loading the data into our data warehouse, but that's okay. We've got CSVs of this data, and so we can go ahead and upload those CSVs. So we'll add in first the credit card information. And we just see a preview. So this is what we would expect. So the different credit cards that we accept. And then we also want to add in one more resource for the association of credit cards and orders. So we'll go ahead and add that. And then we'll add a mapping for orders, credit card mapping. And we'll connect that to used in. We'll go to the mapping tab and just complete the mapping. And so we need to set a primary identifier for credit cards. So what would uniquely identify a credit card within this scenario? And then what would uniquely identify an order, just so that we know what two sides of that relationship is connected to. And we'll also create one more new mapping from the credit card source to the credit card class there. And so we'll see that like Stardog already ran a few suggestions for us. These look like they're fairly well matched, so we'll just go ahead and accept those. And then we'll also add in a label to make it easy to read what the different credit card types are. So now going back to our model, we see that we didn't have the data, we didn't have any lookup data to map to the associated with, but that's not a problem. We can use inference rules to create those associations. And so we're just gonna create a rule for associated with, and we'll say that if a credit card was used in an order and that order was made by a specific profile, then that profile ID is associated with a credit card. And so this just means that if we wanted to find all the different credit cards that were associated with a specific profile, or which profile was associated with a known credit card, we could now do that analysis with this inferencing rule, even though we weren't able to directly map data that connected profile and credit card. We're going to go ahead and say save that. And now this is all the mapping that we wanted to do. And so we can go ahead and publish this directly to our Stardog server. But I remember, marketing was going through some presentation the other week, and something stood out to us. We saw that on profile, there was some sensitive data that was being shown. We do track social security numbers, and it just kind of stood out to us. So we're going to go back to social security numbers and make sure that that's captured in a sensitive property group, so only certain users can see that data. And so we'll create a new group called PII before we publish, and we'll just confirm that once we're doing our analysis. We'll kind of get two birds with one stone here. So then we'll go to publish. We do want to publish that same server that we were using before. We'll update our database, the Customer 360 demo. We don't need a zip file, but if we did want a zip file to check into Git, we could include that in our export. We're going to be replacing the existing tech ontology with our new one. And we're going to publish that sensitive property group to make sure we're keeping our customers' data secure. And then we're also going to include our inference rules and create new mappings for our credit card and order information. So we'll go ahead and publish. Go back to Stardog Cloud. So as a revenue operations analyst, I have fairly robust read writes within our knowledge graph. But just to check that sensitive property group was implemented correctly, we'll go ahead and go to our read-only view of this data set and go into Explore to do our analysis. And so we'll connect to our data set. And again, we just wanted to check that profile that marketing was highlighting the other week. And so we'll start there by just bringing up profile, and we can see, has the full name equal to a specific value. Now something like, I think it was like Kathy Escobar, right? Was the user they were highlighting. So we can go ahead and search for that user and see their details. And okay, we see that their SSN is now hashed. We know that if we wanted to, add a message to this or show, the last four digits, we could change the masking function. But for now, the fact that it's masked is already closing a gap there for us. So that's great. We can now start on the analysis that we wanted to do for which credit card companies we should partner with. And so we're going to start a new query, and we'll look specifically for credit cards that are used in orders. And we do want to expand out our graph results so we can see the summarized order information. And so we'll go ahead and search. This will just take a moment as we're aggregating all of those orders to each of the credit cards. And the goal here is to find a few credit cards that we would want to pursue relationships with. So we see a few that stand out in terms of the total number of orders from our customers. And so there's, Barnes & Noble MasterCard. There's also this one with over 1,000 orders, so Amazon Rewards. So these are kind of making sense to us because we do, Acme as a company specializes in movie and book orders. And so it makes sense that people would be interested in those. Seattle U, we have a brick and mortar store very close to Seattle University. And Disney, okay, so right along the lines of those movie, those customers that are interested in movies. So this makes sense. So we think that we should reach out to those 4 credit card companies. So Disney and Barnes & Noble, Amazon, as well as Seattle U, to try and improve cashback offers. And we think that, using targeting messaging for those cashback offers, we can help users complete checkout, their checkout rates, knowing that they would get additional cash back on certain orders with us. With that, we'll just jump back and kind of go to the summary that's being presented to our leadership team. So we've gone over 2 of our proposals here. So a marketing proposal, again, just leveraging that neighbor network to target new customers via multi-channel campaigns. And we believe that this will lead to new customer revenue projection of 8%. And then we have revenue operations, partnering with credit card companies to promote cashback incentives. We think this will actually help our checkout completion and improve it by 17%. And then IT also had their own proposal, was expanding the use of knowledge graphs across our org to profit from incremental successful projects using data analytics, reducing waste, and increasing efficiencies. And IT probably did the most robust ROI analysis with this for 320% ROI on that investment and close to 10 million. And these are actual, for the IT budget, we have actual numbers from Stardog's Total Economic Impact Study that was conducted independently by Forrester. And so I see Ingrid put up a proposal here. So just kind of adding a little bit of fun to some of these demo days. Which proposal would you select based off of, the type of analysis and answers that and projected and revenue increases or innovation that each of these teams were putting forward.
Yep, and it looks like I'll just leave it up for another couple of minutes, but I do see, let's see, get another percentage of people to make it worth showing the answers. But thank you, Laura. Yeah, just a little fun there with the last minute IT submission. Who knew IT was even submitting for this proposal? But there they are. So let me end this and we can show what the answers are. Okay, what do we got here? All right, so it looks like IT. Yeah, I mean, IT was probably in a better position here because they had 3 years of actual data. Look, it's hard to find innovation. Sometimes it's right under your nose, and sometimes you've got to create it out of thin air. And so Laura and I just thought this was an interesting use case that's coming, particularly this year. So much more pressure to find ROI out of the data that we're already sitting on, regardless of what industry you're working in. So Laura, I don't know if you had another slide or if you wanted to move to Q&A now, but thank you all for participating in that survey. I do see we have some questions on deck. So
yeah, we can just jump right into the Q&A.
Great. And I know some of you had asked some questions on the side, so I can try to answer those directly as well. Someone had asked if you could go deeper into what is the inferencing.
Oh, sure. So inferencing within Stardog is one example that I love to use for inferencing is imagine that you had family tree data connected within your knowledge graph. And so you had parent relationships and child relationships, but you didn't have any more complex relationships like uncles or sisters or things like that. And so with inferencing rules, you would be able to define a business rule or, in this case, just, family tree hierarchy rule that said if a parent had a brother then that brother would be that parent's child's uncle. And so one benefit to that is that uncle is not a specific relationship that you've enumerated in your database. But when querying Stardog, you can turn on reasoning, and that rule will be evaluated at runtime to find all of the uncles that exist in your data set. That's a really good question.
Yeah. And I think, it's a huge sort of differentiator when you're trying to compare, say, a labeled property graph to a knowledge graph. Creating those triples and having that extra inferencing capability where you can identify relationships without having IT map them one to one to one to one to one to one every time there's new data being set. The platform can infer those relationships, as Laura noted. I'm going to knock out a couple of quick ones here, Laura. There was some conversation about what kind of backend you need for this. So just to lay that out, Stardog is at once, it is a graph database in so many words that is also a semantic layer. So you wouldn't need a separate graph backend because Stardog does all of that work. Plus adding that semantic data layer to give business meaning to that data. So you would not need both. Although we do, technically speaking, we can work with any graph or CSV or MongoDB documents, etc., as was asked in the question. And yes, Stardog works with various data warehouses, data lakes, business intelligence tools, many of which we have a partner relationship with, we have connectors with like everyone, but some organizations we do, we're living inside their apps or their warehouses, et cetera, and data can probably be pulled more quickly in presets, et cetera. So hopefully that answered that question. There was some questions about, we have some questions here about the masking. I don't know if you can see that in the Q&A.
So it is a base64 encryption, and then you'd be able to set a custom masking function if you wanted that to say, read like this data is sensitive, just so that users knew that it was being masked.
Yep. And then to someone else's comment in the chat about this being used to prevent fraud, I'm being spot on. There are a variety of customers who, certainly are getting a lot of ROI out of risk analysis, identifying fraud prevention, really connecting the dots where you might otherwise need thousands of human hours to figure that out, and doing that rather quickly, whether it's credit card fraud or whether it's an analyst, they have such requirements of reporting what their investments are, et cetera. So I think it can be helpful for nefarious reasons as well as just innocent reasons that you haven't reported everything you need to report. So thank you for that comment. Let's see. We also have Laura modeling the ontologies. Normally folks who work with Stardog, we certainly have a lot of advice and support on modeling ontologies. Some of our customers do it themselves, and some have someone else come in. And there's some great ontologies already out there, right, Laura? There's some great open source ontologies that some folks start with. So we're always there to support that journey.
Certainly. And then just adding on to that one thing we really like to work with customers on is starting with a single use case and kind of building out from there. And so that can kind of take some of the ontology building and focus it on that use case. And you can continue expanding your ontology as your use cases within your knowledge graph grow. Because, no one wants to boil the ocean. That's just not an undertaking we can commit to.
I see a lot of questions that I think I can pile under virtualization. And I think, it's about sort of the value of virtualization, and does Stardog keep a copy of the data? So I think that those are sort of two coins of virtualization. So maybe you can hit that.
Sure. So virtualization is, well, we should probably put together, I know we have some in the past of a demo day there, Ingrid, but virtualization as a whole, this is one way that, I also see a couple questions about a data warehouse and how Stardog can differ from data warehouses. And so I'd want to almost connect those 2 points. So virtualization is one way Stardog can allow you to leave your data where it lives, and provide that flexibility for systems that already write to that existing warehouse or another data store. But then Stardog also adds that semantic data layer on top of, say, whether that warehouse information or that other data systems information. And so with that semantic data layer, you can take, one example I like to use is a pharmaceutical use case where R&D labs each had their own data stores, but then they wanted to provide access to each of those labs' research information across an organization. And so they're using Stardog to allow different labs to query data in a common structure with a common semantic layer on top of it, but leaving their individual lab information in a data warehouse where there's already processes for writing it, and each lab can continue to own their own management. So those are 2 things that kind of work in conjunction with each other, of that data layer on top of an existing data store, such as a data warehouse, and using virtualization to leave kind of ownership and existing processes in place.
Right. And then just reduce ETL or storage costs. Also noted by our customers as a sort of value of virtualization. And not everyone has to use virtualization, but it is there. I know we also have a lot of questions that I see coming in about AI. Let's see, what kind of machine learning can be applied? Is there an AI simulation plugin or recommendations? We talk about this all the time, sort of AI and ML prep. A lot of our customers are using Knowledge Graph to prep for AI and ML. And I think one of the biggest values we're hearing is, in order for the AI to be built on a model that is projecting forward, more of a sense of the truth in terms of data, the Knowledge Graph is helpful to organize all that and check those connections. So there's a lot of sort of AI ML prep happening in Knowledge Graph, but I'll let Laura answer more on any. She's our product person, so I'll let her get in there as she wants. Too bad Al's not here. It's just one of his favorite topics.
Yeah, I'm sure Al could finish us off in terms of time frame with talking about this one. So Stardog does offer a few plugins for doing any AI or additional analyst work, and so I would invite you to look through some documentation for that, but at a really high level. So we have libraries with Python that could help. If you did have data scientists or other analysts that are using Python, that would be one way they could interact directly from those scripts with Stardog. We also we have a partnership with Databricks, allowing users to take advantage of some of the infrastructure within Databricks, ML processes to Stardog, so kind of some of the Spark work that can be done there. And then we also offer a SQL endpoint. So you can access Stardog information while in a graphical form using languages such as SQL that you might be familiar with, and then provide that data, whether you're querying it directly in a SQL-based tool or a BI tool like Tableau, building out dashboards.
Okay, I know I'm sure we haven't gotten to all the questions, and I know I'm trying to send some folks directly answers as well. But I guess we'll let me just see. So any questions we didn't get to, I'm going to send you guys an email. So feel free to respond to me. We're going to spend another minute or two, but feel free to respond to me if we didn't get to them. What are some specific use cases? Okay, wait here. How does knowledge graph perform when underlying data runs into multi-GPs? Is that a storage or performance question? I mean, Stardog is highly performant. I could send you the triples. I'm going to send that triples report. What are specific use cases where Stardog shines over data warehouse products? Most of our customers have a data warehouse. But again, it's like that's where the data is sitting and the data is not doing. So any use case where you need to take some action orientation and that can help you get there faster. Fraud for sure. So data warehouse or data lake acceleration. If you're competing with someone and, whether it's drug discovery or whether you're trying to get to market faster on a product, the reduction in time wasted by, say, analysts or data scientists could get you there faster. That's a growing use case. And certainly some of your traditional use cases like semantic search, data and analytics, just, if you sell data and analytics, supercharging them. Am I missing anything, Laura?
That was a great overview for.
Yeah, and then so for performance, we have the Trillion Edge report, which I'll post here too. And that was a third party. I think it was a McKnight study, and it was a third party. So Stardog, our founders are very geeky about how fast your results are. And so they've taken a special liking to being very performant and performing well. And many of our clients are just sitting under tons and tons of data. And so they just can't wait, a full minute or even 15 seconds for results. So very performant in that sense. And I'll go ahead and grab that Trillion Edge report and plug that in. Do you see any questions in the Q&A, Laura, that we didn't get to? I tried to hit all the ones in the chat.
Yeah, so it's a good question here of like, is it possible to do ad hoc combinations of graphs and virtualized databases? So certainly Stardog supports combining both materialized data as well as virtualized data. That's one benefit within our virtualization layer, and that is actively reading data from those underlying stores. So as that data continues to live and evolve, you would get the latest updates within Stardog. Definitely a good question there.
Okay. Well, I think we've kind of run to time. Some of the questions we probably didn't get to are sort of like CSV cleaning, uploading, etc. Stardog does. Laura did show sort of a validation tool where Stardog will sort of predict, hey, these things go together, and you can click yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, and it'll tell you how sure it is. So that's something that can help with CSV cleanup once it's loaded. You could also rename, columns and rows, etc. once it's in Stardog. Mappings. Okay, I think we kind of hit again, if we didn't, let us know. We're so happy that you spent your time with us. We know it's valuable and we really appreciate it. I love the ideas that folks have posted for potential demo days. So we'll keep a log of that. And we hope to see you at the next one. I will also plug that if you do have Databricks as your data lake, we are doing a webinar with them next week, January 17th through TDWI. We'll also be attending the TDWI conference in Las Vegas next month if you are around. If not, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or send me an email. I'll send you a copy of this webinar once it's done. Thank you to our speaker, Laura. Always happy to have her here. And we will see you at the next one.
Thank you all.